Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namah Sudhismriti purananam alayam karunalayam namami bhagavat padam shankaram lokashankaram. So today we are going to conclude the second of the four Mahavakyas. We are discussing Aham Brahmasmi till now. Some of these very important concepts are very lucidly, very elaborately described in a well-known book. It's called Panchadasi. It's a very well-known book. It is some kind of a very elaborate introduction to the whole range of Advaita philosophy, written by Vidyaranya, who was associated with the Dakshinamnaya, the Sringeri mount, which is founded by Shankaracharya. So I shall just discuss a few verses from this book, because this is very authentic, and after Shankaracharya's commentaries themselves and the works of his disciples, this comes as the second level of authentic scriptures expounding the Mahavakyas. So I'm just quoting one or two verses from this Panchadasi. It's got the name Panchadasi because it has got 15 chapters, very elaborate. It gives the brief introduction to the whole range of Advaita philosophy. And it analyzes these Mahavakyas in its fifth section. It's called Adha, it's a Mahavakya Viveka, that is the chapter. It's called, an analysis, an exposition of the Mahavakyas. So this chapter describes the different aspects of all the four Mahavakyas. So the Aham Brahmasmi, this Mahavakya is expounded like this: Paripurna Paratmasmin Dehe Vidyadhikarini Buddhe Sakshitaya Sthitva Spirannaha Miti Iryate. So Paripurna Paratma, this Atman, this all-pervading reality, it exists in this human body. It exists in this human body. How it exists is explained here in the form of, as a witness of the functions of mind, intellect, thoughts, emotions, feelings, all this. So how does this infinite Atman, Brahman, how does it exist in this world or in this human body? It exists as the witness. So the witness aspect, rather the witness concept, is a very important and very effective way of explaining this transcendental reality. Witness in Sanskrit is called Sakshi. So you can find Buddhehi Sakshitaya Sthitva. So it is the Sakshi, a witness of intellect. That's a literal translation, but intellect also includes, intellect means buddhi, or just the thinking faculty, or determinative faculty. It is called Nishchidatmikataya, so Nishchiyatmika. So that is the desiderative, Nishchiyatmika. Vritti, or a mental system functioning as desiderative or determinative or as intellectual faculty. Now, many of us, when we read the English translations, we are very likely to commit an error. And often in translations, certain points, certain very vital points of philosophy cannot be clearly elaborated. Just like any, a very profound, a very complex theological doctrine of Augustine or Aquinas, or a philosophical idea of Kant cannot really be translated into different language, which is different not only in terms of philological, linguistic aspects, but also in terms of culture, without long, elaborative descriptions, which is not possible in any translations. For example, here in this, those of you who are interested can remember, this verse is from a well-known text called Panchadashi, a book written by one of the prominent monks, abbots associated with the Sringeri Mutt, Vidyaranya. And it has got, it's called Panchadashi because it has got 15 sections. And its fifth section deals with the analysis and description of the 4 great statements called Mahavakyas. And the one verse which I am quoting is the third one, and it in a way tries to explain Mahavakya. Paripurnaha paratma asmin dekhe vidyadhikarini buddhehi sakshitaya sthitva spuran aham iti iryate. This is the verse. Now this Paramatma, it exists in this human body as the witness of intellect. This is the English translation. Now, according to one important principle in Vedantic hermeneutics, it's called Upalakshana Nyaya. If you mention one item, then it also may or can include a number of related items. For example, if you mention Netrendriya, one of the 5 senses of perception called the eyes, the sense of vision, let us say. Indirectly, it also implies other senses of perception like ears with which we hear, skin with which you touch things, and the tongue with which you know things by taste, and so the nostrils with which you know the existence of things which gives you smell, and so on. So if you mention one, the other related aspects also may be implied. It's called by implication. So Upalakshana Nyaya. Nyaya means. It's a very interesting, the Hindu Vedanta hermeneutics so very elaborate. As I mentioned this earlier, Kage Bhyo Dadi Rikshatam. So you should, and mother tells her child, son, be careful, and she puts a pot of yogurt, milk curds, in the sun, which is a practice in ancient times in the tropical countries. And then he tells the son, be careful, some crows may come and eat this curds or yogurt in ancient times. So it means you should protect this yogurt not only from crows, but also from cats, dogs, other animals which may come and eat it. So the child cannot say, my mother only asked me to protect the yogurt from crows or other birds. So if a dog comes and eats it, I don't have to worry about it. There's no excuse. So it implies so many other things. Like that, when this particular verse tells you, it is buddhehi sakshi, witness of intellect. It also means witness of mind, the entire mental system, memory system, the sense of ego identification system, and also our speculative system. So one way of explaining or describing Atman is, it is a sakshi, it is the witness of everything. Now how and why do you call it witness? A witness performs 2 functions. First, the witness should be aware of what it has witnessed. Secondly, the witness should be very careful not to be involved in what it has witnessed. So, an important thing. So, it is called bodhrutvat, audasinyatvat, sakshitvam. You are a sakshi because you should be aware of what you are claiming to be a witness of. At the same time, you should not be involved in that. So, Atman is not involved in any of the activities of the senses. But Atman is aware of everything. Atman is of the nature of universal awareness, prajnana. At the same time, it is not entangled, it is not attached to anything. So that's why now buddhehe sakshi means the witness of intellect also means the witness of whatever is happening in this world at the physical level. Atman is the essence of its awareness without being involved in it, without being attached to it. Now, and how do we normally identify this aham? It is I, the I ideal. That means it is the self-knowledge can only be designated the I, not identifying with any of the five senses or body or mind or anything. Beyond everything, there is one I within us, and that I is the witness of everything. Now here you can see this concept of the absolute reality can fit in only with the non-dualistic or Advaitic concept of Godhood. In any monotheistic idea of God, a monotheistic God is not only a witness but is also involved in everything that happens in the creation of which he is the responsible, he is the creator, of which he is the source. So God listens to our prayer, God punishes for our wrong deeds, God takes compassion on us, God creates this world. So all these ideas. Now remember, Vedanta never says these ideas are wrong. And that's an important point to remember. This is the main problem here. Very often people think that Advaita is so universal, so that the universality itself becomes a fanaticism. That's a very wrong idea. And some people raise this question in the comments. That's because they don't understand the point. Suppose you say that everyone should be compassionate, everyone should be good, and somebody tells you, you're so fanatical in the idea, in the concept that everyone should be good. That itself becomes a fanaticism. So that's one way. I have found such comments in the comment boxes. It's all right, no problem. It's perfectly okay. But so you should remember, Advaita is not a fanatical idea because it never rejects, never says that any path is wrong. If you go to the nearby mountain in your neighborhood and see the grandeur of the mountains, the clouds, the sky, the river below, and if you say, well, this is all, this is the essence of everything, Vedanta will never tell you it is wrong. But there were many great men, especially in pantheistic literature, both in philosophy, like Emerson's philosophy, also in literature, like Wordsworth's poems and so on. Just some examples you can find. They identified the grandeur of phenomenal world, the mountains and rain, mountains and clouds and rivers and trees as the manifestation of the Absolute. Nothing wrong in Vedanta, never say it's wrong. Vedanta says that there is still scope for your spiritual evolution. The reality never evolves, but our understanding of that reality, that evolves, that becomes more and more complete as we evolve. So, one important concept is that the absolute reality, Brahman, is a sakshi, is a witness. Why witness? Because witness implies awareness. Witness also implies non-involvement. That is audasinyatvat. So, in a court of law, after all, a witness should be able to clearly do the testimony. He should be aware of what happened, what he is trying to claim to be witness of. At the same time, he should not be involved. Then his words have no value. This is true in Vedanta also. So this is an important thing. And it continues, Sotapurna Paratmatra Brahma Shabdena Varnitaha Asmi idi Aikyaparamarshastena Brahma Bhavamiham. So Aham Brahma Asmi. So these are 3 words here. So here, the scripture tells you that by nature, Sotaha Purnaha, by its very inherent nature, it is complete, infinite. So, and because it is infinite, it is all accommodating, all encompassing, it is called Brahman. At the same time, the word Asmi, that is, I am, it denotes that identity of Aham, the Jivatma, and Brahman, the Paramatma. Again, we have to remember the old principle. Here, Brahma, in its literal meaning, doesn't appear to be logical in this context. So, you should take the implied meaning. The implied meaning of Brahman is the all-pervading, the witness, the omnipresent, the transcendental, absolute reality. And Aham, I, not the physical body, not this body-mind complex, but behind and beyond this body-mind complex, there is that presence of the divine spark within us. That these two are the same. This is the implication. Now, one important point to remember is, of course, this continues, actually, this text is very elaborate, so I'm not going beyond this particular limit. But I want to emphasize one and very important aspect of this. I mentioned at the very beginning that when you analyze the Mahavakya, it gives you a route, sort of an idea of the journey from many to one, from external to internal, from gross to subtle. So, when a spiritual seeker listens to the Mahavakya Tattwamasi, it gradually it strikes a kind of an idea in that person's mind. That depends upon the spiritual seeker's own spiritual evolution. Those who are highly evolved will immediately understand it. Those who are not so highly evolved will not understand it. Now, how the journey takes place? This is mentioned in another very important book. The book is called Mandukya Karika or Gaudapada Karika. Mandukya Upanishad is a very short Upanishad, only 12 mantras. It is from Atharva Veda. It also contains one Mahavakya, Ayamatma Brahma. It's a important Mahavakya. It is in the Mandukya Upanishad. And it's a very short Upanishad, but it has got a very elaborate commentary in verses. So a commentary in verses is called the Karika, written by Gaudapada, who lived maybe 150 years before Shankaracharya. So there, this spiritual journey is clearly described. How we travel in the spiritual space from instruction, from intellectual instruction to inner experience. So it is Anadi Mayaya Supto Yada jiva prabuddhide ajam anidram aswapnam advaitam buddhide tada. This is the verse, those who are interested. You can keep in mind the 16th verse of Mandukya Karika or Gaudapada Karika. It has got two names because the author is Gaudapada, who was actually Shankaracharya's teacher's teacher, Guru's Guru. So it has got 4 sections, 4 chapters. And the first one is called Agama Prakarana. And in that first chapter, this comes as the 16th verse. And it's a very famous, well-known verse. Anadi Mayaya Suptaha. That's the first part. Means we are all asleep in deep spiritual slumber. We are all sleeping. It is not physical sleep, but it is spiritual sleep. Now, somebody, one compassionate teacher comes and wakes us up. And at that time, we wake up. And then we realize that our true nature is that we are not a sleeping entity, we are an ever awake entity. We are the essence of awareness. So when we are sleeping, this Atman, that's the true nature, was manifesting in a particular manner. When we are dreaming, it manifests in a different manner. When we are in waking state, it again manifests in a different manner. At the same time, it has, by its own nature, no association with either waking, dream, or deep sleep states. It is beyond all this. It is Turiya. This fact is taught by a compassionate teacher. And Shankaracharya actually in his commentary gives a very powerful, very elaborate, very graphic description of how this awakening happens. And the teacher comes and tells you, Tattwamasi. In the commentary you find. Now, when a sleeping person hears this, what meaning does he make out of this? It depends upon his own spiritual evolution. I mentioned earlier that those who are highly evolved, who are endowed with sadhana, chadushta sambhati, sarvana, manana, nididhyasana, etc., they will immediately realize the meaning of this instruction, Tattwamasi, and that realization takes the form of this inner realization, that is Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. And those who are not so highly evolved and not so well equipped, not so fit, they will not understand it. They may need a lot of, the teacher will have to shake him, we have to guard him, we have to force him to wake up and sit up and listen. He may not be able to listen, or even listening also may not produce any effect on him. His commentary is very famous, so that's what I am going to take. You can remember, if you are interested, you can remember the commentary on the 16th verse of the first chapter of the Gaudapada Karika. The language is very beautiful. Those who know Sanskrit can enjoy the grandeur of it. Meanwhile, I am sorry, now I suddenly remember that our regular moderator is away. Suddenly the idea came to me. Somehow I forgot that. I think I would have waited a little. Somehow we started the class. I'm sorry. It happens sometimes, Anyway, so he says, but still, suddenly I remembered just now. Okay, now the commentary is very important. Yoyam samsari jivaha. You see, just word. Yoyam yaha ayam samsari jivaha. What means? This jiva and this many individual soul. Samsari. But who is a samsari? Somebody who travels through this cycle, this wheel. And remember, if you are traveling along a wheel, you won't reach anywhere. A wheel has no beginning, no end. Or every point is beginning, middle and end for a circle, for a wheel. And who is this individual soul? He is traveling from birth, life, enjoying and suffering, getting old age, getting old, death, rebirth. Again, this cycle continues. The wheel goes on rotating. So, an individual soul is called a samsari. He is moving along this wheel. And then what happens? He is not only moving along with this wheel because he is moving because he is sleeping. Means he is in a state of ignorance, darkness. So, sa ubhayalakshanena tattva apradibodharupena bijatmana anyatha grihana lakshanena cha anadigala pravruttena maya lakshanena swapnena mama ayam pida putroyam napta kshetram griham pashavaha ahamesham swami sukhi dukhi. So it continues like that. So kshidoham anena, vardidascha anena, etc. It's very interesting, very interesting. What it says is, so we all think, normally we identify ourselves as the son or daughter or mother or father or brother or sister, colleague or friends and so on. These are all our identities, depending upon our profession, our qualities, and the species that we may belong to, the characteristics that can be used to define our personality. So, Panja Shabda Pravritti means 5 ways of defining different living beings. I mean, Jadi, Guna, Dravya, Karma, Sambandha. What species one may belong to, with a human being, Homo sapiens and so on. And then he is a good person, bad person, he is tall or short and so on. If it is not a human being, if it is a flower, you may call him white flower, yellow flower, green flower, blue flower and so on, or a picture. Or one may associate, one may define oneself for another person like, he is my brother, he is my father and so on. And sometimes we define ourselves sukhi, dukhi. I am happy, I am unhappy and so on. Anena kshaitaha, anena varditaha means I lost certain things and I got certain things. I have increased some of my wealth. I have lost some of my wealth. Like that, winner, loser and so on. In these different ways, we are defining ourselves, we are explaining, describing ourselves. Our self-definition is based on our wrong notion that we are this body, mind complex and nothing else. So all these definitions, all these possible definitions are built upon one foundation. What's the foundation? That is, we all think we are only the body, mind complex, nothing else. So now, this what is the cause of this? The cause of this is ignorance. And how does that ignorance manifest? It's called Maya. So what does Maya do? Maya makes us forget what we are, and Maya makes us identify with something that we are not. So avarana vikshepa. The reality is hidden or covered, and when you are not seeing the rope, then you may think it is a snake. Because the real nature of the rope is covered because of our own memory, smriti rupa, because of adhyasa. So when we are not aware of our true nature, we identify with something that we actually are not, and we fail to understand what we actually are, or we fail to identify ourselves with what we actually are. This is called Maya. Now, what is actually Maya? If you understand the concept of Maya, it is very striking. This Maya is not some kind of an old Vedantic Sanskrit language, some term that's used by Sanskrit Pandits. I can give you an example. If you go to Disneyland or any such place, $50 you pay, 3 hours you spend. Now, there in 3 hours, you may be going through a lot of experiences. When you come out, then we realize it was just a show. So there are powerful movies, for example, not these sensational movies that can, because they are such bogus, they are so, they are so unrealistic that even when you are seeing it, you know it's all bogus. You are not this. If you're somebody fighting and all, you know it never happens. But there are powerful movies, for example. When you see, you will forget that you are living in America. You will forget this is your name. You identify yourself with a great character. This could happen also when you read great works, great books, great plays. Also when you identify yourself with a great painting. In fact, Raphael and Da Vinci could do all the great things because they could forget themselves. They identified themselves with what they were painting. The great musicians could forget the world and also themselves and could identify themselves with the great music that we were composing. That is as true of Beethoven or Mozart or as Tyagaraja or any of the great spiritual musicians of India. Because unless you forget the empirical reality around, you cannot really produce a great movie, a great painting, a great novel or great short story or anything. Now what happens, during that time when you forget yourself, your empirical background, world around you, you're living there. I can give one example. So in Tolstoy's War and Peace, there is a conversation between a highly idealistic French soldier who is a follower of Napoleon. Napoleon's invasion of Russia is an important theme in War and Peace. And so it's very interesting, very huge work, literary classic, with so many characters, scanning through such a large space, geographical area and so on. So there is one conversation between a poor, humble, illiterate Russian soldier and a highly idealistic French soldier. That was a time when French idealism was, just after the French Revolution, Napoleon became the dictator, and then you heard of Napoleonic Wars, his conquest. Finally, he turned against Russia, Napoleon's invasion of Russia, and his route, he was routed and he had to withdraw with great humiliation. He lost most of his soldiers, only 600,000 soldiers marched under Napoleon to Russia, and only less than 100,000 returned. It's a disaster, one of the great military disasters in world history. So there is one important conversation between a humble Russian soldier, naturally illiterate, rustic person, and a highly idealistic French soldier. They are enemies actually, but they're friendly conversation. See, we are all equally victims of a system of these kings we are all pawns in their hands. You can find many such scenes in the great writings of novelists. You can find. So if you read that, you may forget everything else, you get absorbed because you identify yourself in the novel. Your friends and colleagues and relatives, yourself you will find in a great novel. A great novel is a great mirror that the author places right in front of your face. Now, it's a great example. For a short time, we forget our true nature. when we go to Disneyland, when we go watch a movie. 3 hours. Now suppose you extend the 3 hours, let's say, to 90 years. A movie that lasts for 90 years. That's all human life. So human life is not actually very different from a long movie. Instead of 3 hours, it lasts for 90 years. Not real. Because it begins somewhere, it ends somewhere. It doesn't last for long. So Maya is like that. Maya is really an endless, continuous movie. Pictures come and go. But pictures appear on a screen. The screen is real, but what you seem to see on the screen is unreal, is not a fact. But at the same time, we identify with what we see on the screen. Maya is like that. And how does this happen? The reality is hidden, avarana, and in its place something else is projected, vikshepa. That's why Maya lakshanena, swapnena. It's like a dream. So the Maya is like a dream. So instead of dreaming for a few hours every day as we do, our whole life is compared to dream. One may live for 90 years. It is a 90 years dream. Why do we call it dream? Because dream is not totally unreal. Dream has some connection with the real. But dream itself is not real. That's a fact. So, this Maya functions in this way. The whole human life is Maya. Now remember, there is something else here in the Bhashya. See, Mamayam pida putroyam napta kshetram griham pashava ahamesham swami sukhi dukhi aham. So he is my father, he is my son, and I am now happy, I am now unhappy, all these fields are mine, all these cows, cattle, animals are my property. I am happy, I am unhappy, and so on. Like that, all these identifications also are just like dreams, like movies, or movie experiences that we see. Why? Because they are not eternal. They have a beginning, they have an end. So this is the long sleep that Shankaracharya says. Anadi mayaya supto ida jiva prabuddhite. Anadi maya means this beginningless maya. Maya is called the beginningless. It doesn't mean that it is eternal. It really never begins. It has no reality. Something which really doesn't exist, but we imagine it exists. It has no beginning. To have a beginning, even the empirical world, it should have a beginning. It should be physically verifiable. But something which really doesn't exist cannot have a beginning. But then Maya has an end. Why? Because when we wake up from this Maya, from this eternal spiritual slumber, then we realize, oh, it was all dream. It was just, I was seeing all this within the movie theater, in the Disneyland. Outside Disneyland, it doesn't exist. Again, in fact, the commentator says, Ityevam prakaran swapnan sthanadvepi pasyan suptaha yada vedantartha tattva abhignena paramakarunigena guruna na sevam tvam hedupalatmaka kintu tattvamasi idi pratibodhimanaha. So then a great teacher comes. A great teacher wakes up this sleeping person. Sleeping in a spiritual sense. And then he tells him, look here, you are not this physical entity. In reality, you are something much more than that. You are not this body-mind complex that is seeing this, that is experiencing this dream, or which are you experiencing already waking objects when you are in waking state. In reality, you are Tattwamasi. So that's it, this mentioned. Bhashikara says, the teacher comes and tells him, you are Tattwamasi. So, and then what happens? Katham nasmin bahyam abhyantaram va janmadi bhava vikaro asti. Actually, in reality, you are the birthless and deathless eternal reality. Now remember, it is a high, not a long, easy task. But I want to tell you one thing. Even an intellectual interest, if it is deep-rooted, can help us, if we can have this idea in mind and live in the world, it can give us a unique kind of spiritual common sense. When the business collapses, people lose their sleep, people even commit suicide because they think the money they lost is eternal. And also this condition of losing money or bankruptcy is eternal. They forget that the business may be revived after some time. They may again regain the lost money. They forget it because they impose permanence on something that is impermanent by its very nature. So the idea that everything in this world is essentially unreal in the absolute sense, so in like a dream, that can be a very wonderful way of analyzing. Again, it is not a tool for psychological counseling. It is stark reality. We all know that this world can and never be permanent. Never. But we forget it. We may know intellectually, and but this intellectual awareness we are not able to translate into a useful, handy tool in our hands when we confront problems in life. So, even an intellectual understanding, this higher philosophy, can give us a kind of spiritual common sense. So Shankaracharya says, when you're asleep, then parama karunikena vedantartha tattva abhijnena guruna na sevam tvam hedubalataha, means kintu tattwamasi. You are not this part of this flow of cause and effect, of actions and the results. You are not this body-mind complex that enjoys and suffers, that is happy now and unhappy next minute. But you are beyond all this. You are Tattvam Asi. You are that eternal reality, the Atman, that you are seeking. You are non-different from it. So, and then he says, Nasmin bahima abhindrava janmadi bhava vikaraha asti. You are beyond birth, you are beyond growth, beyond evolution, beyond decay, beyond old age, beyond death. Now, this is called spiritual awakening. So, when a person gets this experience of Aham Brahmasmi, it is called spiritual awakening. It has got two dimensions. In the traditional school, a student goes to a hermitage, stays there for long years, practices meditation, spiritual discipline, studies scriptures, and then meditates for long years. He may realize in this life, maybe next life. But in modern times, even as an intellectual idea, this has got a great significance. Because the fact of the fundamental impermanence of everything in this world, which has got a beginning and end, it has got a great significance. That's Shankaracharya says, Janmadi Bhava Vikaraha. So, Janma Adi, birth and so on, birth, etc. So, everything in this empirical world has to go through these 6 changes, called Shat Vikaraha, 6 changes. Jayade, Asti, Vartate, Viparinamate, Apakshite, Vinashyati, means something coming to existence, then exists for some time, then grows, then evolves, and then decays and dies out, only to be reborn again. These are the 6 changes. So also every action produces a residual effect called vritti. It becomes samskaras, vasanas, and accordingly we do things, and again we accumulate new and new samskaras and tendencies, and accordingly we are born again, and under the influence of our accumulated samskaras and tendencies, we do things, we live our life, and this cycle continues. All these happen because we are ignorant of our true nature. That ignorance of our true nature, the ignorance of the fact that we are Atman, that is compared to this long, beginningless spiritual slumber. And what is the meaning of waking up? When you read these books, you get the idea, oh, actually, I am not this body, mind complex alone. I am not this person who made all this money, now lost, stocks are collapsed, so I don't have to worry about it. No, I am not this person, I have something else. I am much more than a businessman, or a banker, or a stock exchange professional who worries, who devastated by the loss of money. I am rather much higher than that. So, you can find Vedanta has 2 dimensions. One is this spiritual common sense dimension, and of course the traditional spiritual experience, anubhuti, that's a higher level. That's a matter of long years of spiritual practice. But even as an intellectual concept, it has got a tremendous meaning and relevance even in modern times. So with this, we are concluding the Mahavakya from Yajurveda, from Bhagavad Upanishad. It's called Aham Brahmasmi. Now you can have interaction. I think in the beginning we somehow skipped because our regular moderator has been somehow, I also lost touch of that. Thank you. Okay, thank you, most welcome.
Thank you, Maharaj. Sri Ram has raised his hand first, and the rest of you can join the question queue by using the raise hand function on Zoom. Go ahead, Sri Ram.
Mr. Swamiji,
Yeah.
is the Panchadashi by Vidyaranya considered a Prakarana Grantha?
It is the most important Prakarana Granthas. Prakarana Granthas can be a very important work, especially if you take Vivekachudamani and Panchadashi. And tiny Prakarana Granthas are the Atma Bodha, Tattva Bodha, which are very simple or definition. So, Panchadashi is the most elaborate introductory work. In fact, before if somebody takes up Bhashya literature, you are expected to study Panchadashi. So all these Avachedavada, Abhasavada, Bimba Pravimbhavada, all Drishti Srishtivada, Srishti Drishtivada, we are going to discuss in next session, in the next coming sessions. All these you find very elaborately described in Panchadashi. So all these ideas are taken from Shankaracharya's Bhasha, it's like an ocean. And Vidyaranya put them all together in metrical form and wrote this most wonderful book. He was a very interesting personality, one of the greatest names during the belonging to post-Shankarite times. Okay, thank you.
Do you have a YouTube series on the Panchadashi?
Excuse me?
Do you have a YouTube series discussing the Panchadashi?
I have not done the whole Panchadashi on YouTube. I have done Vivekachudamani. Panchadashi, after finishing this series, I may take up. It's a very interesting, Actually, I want to tell you something very important. Now, look here. All these texts can be elaborately taught only in an in-person session. This should be understood. Even the best of online session can only be an approximation. So it's a very elaborate, important work by a master Vedantin, master philosopher. Okay, thank you.
Swamiji.
Yeah,
Sanjay, please go ahead.
yeah.
Namaste, Maharaj.
Namaste.
My question is for more of a recap on one particular shloka in Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
There is a new movie that has been released on Robert Oppenheimer,
Oh, yeah.
and there is a lot of conversation about his quote, and I am the destroyer. It is from the chapter 11:32, where he says, Kalosmi loka khayakrut pravruddho lokan samahartu.
Yeah. Kalosmi
That one.
lokakshayakrut means, lokakshayak means the termination, the culmination of the world. So, I am the one in the form of Kala, time, the eternal, almighty, omnipotent time. And, Lokakshayakrut, the one who becomes the cause of the destruction of the universe. So, the origin, existence, and the culmination of the universe happens within the canvas of time. So, one way of explaining God as the creator God is actually nothing but time. Time with the capital letter I. Time not normal as normally used. So what's the time now? It is 6 o'clock, it is 7 o'clock. Not in that sense. But time, the very time concept, which actually it transcends time. Now, time as a philosophical concept transcends time. It's an important thing. Because time takes place within time. Time here means the infinity, the infinitude, the eternality, the eternal, the immortality. That's what it means. It's Lokakshekru pravutto. Lokan samahartu. You just can read at least. You read once more. You read. You read once more.
Yes,
Lokan
Maharaj, I just
samahartu miha pravuttaha. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Kalosmi
aham kalaha means
khayakrut vruddho lokan samahartumiha pravruttaha.
Yeah.
Rutopi tvam na bhavishyanti sarve yevavastithaha pratyanikeshu yodhaha.
So actually, it is the sloka, four lines, it contains two aspects. One is Lord Krishna wants to make Arjuna understand that all these happenings in this world, including his obligation to fight evil persons who are trying to do harm to others. I mean, those soldiers who are actually assembled in front of him, whom he had to fight, and the act of fighting with them. All this happened within time. All these constitute the part of this infinite phenomenon. And the time consumes all this. All this happen within time. They are inevitable, invariable phenomena that happen in this world. So, and I am the one. So, I am actually the one who is responsible for all these to happen. It is not Arjuna, but I am as time. I, aham kalaha asmi. I as time. So remember, in Gita, wherever Lord Krishna uses the word I, first person I, he doesn't mean a particular monotheistic God concept at Krishna. That is the view of those certain schools of philosophy in India, Vaishnavites mostly, according to whom Krishna is the one and only supreme God idea. That is the view of non-Advaitic, non-dualistic, mostly Vaishnavite philosophers. So I will never criticize their view because they're perfectly okay. from a higher Vedantic perspective, I here doesn't mean Krishna, the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Rather, I, the eternal time, the all-pervading, the transcendental time concept. So everything happens within me. Within what? Within this time principle. So you don't have to worry about all these people who are assembled in front of you. There are armies in front of you, assembled in front of you. Yodha, all the soldiers are in front of you. So, I am the one who is responsible, who is involved behind this phenomena of origin, existence and culmination of everything in this world. I am also iha pravruttaha. And here also I am the one who is behind all this. So remember, the entire life, existence, all human actions are actually, are happening within me. I am the one behind all this. So, it's a higher concept. In other words, we are sitting here discussing Vedanta. This also part of the eternal time concept. All this happen in time. So Arjuna was hesitating. Arjuna had a lot of confusion, doubts. How do I go about fighting this war? How can I fight with my relatives and others who are indulging in terrible evil activities? So as a soldier, as a person who was supposed to protect the women folk and children and helpless people, it was Arjuna's duty to fight and to defend these defenseless people. So Arjuna was doubtful. So you have to go back to the first chapter where Arjuna begins the dialogue, this Tvemam Sajanam Krishna Ayutsum Samavastam, etc. 28 verse of the first chapter. So Arjuna was totally confused. So how do I fight? How do I deal with them? So Krishna again and again repeats, don't hesitate, do your duty. It may be unpleasant. It may involve your quarreling or your fighting with those who are related to you. But as a soldier, it's your duty. So again, it's not an exhortation for violence. Rather, Krishna was telling Arjuna to fight so that there be less violence in this world. If Krishna had not exhorted Arjuna to fight, there will be more violence, more bloodshed and more injustice, more terrible things happening. So to prevent that from happening, Krishna's primary responsibility was to inspire Arjuna to do that. Therefore, all these things happen, even this Manhattan project, the explosion, this atomic project experiments, all this happened. That gave him a sense of the infinity, sense of infinitude, sense of the highest transcendental, some higher power behind everything, in which everything happens. And that higher power is the eternal time. So you don't have to worry about fighting with a man like Duryodhana, who was his cousin but an evil person, like Hitler or Joseph Stalin. That is Arjuna's duty, to fight these evil persons. You don't have to worry, which happens all the time. They were born, and you are also born to counter them. So both happen in time only. Remember, this is an interesting thing. So, you can imagine, in the world you find there are terrible people, sometimes are born, and there are also wonderful people who are born to counter them. Both happen in time. Arjuna's role was to counter the evil activities of the evil men, like Duryodhana, Dushasana and others. And so both happen in time. So why do you hesitate? All this happen. So here the most important point is aham kalaha. Don't worry about anything. You can imagine, suppose you have any problem, any confrontation, any conflicts in this world. Suppose you say everything happens in time. Time is eternal. And here again, we have to understand time as the eternal, immortal reality, the supreme spiritual principle, not as time concept as we understand in practical life. I don't know if it's clear to you or not.
Yes, Maharaj.
Eh?
Yeah, I think this it is very apt now why he mentioned that when he heard about the bomb being dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki,
Yeah.
which he was not, he did not have insight into it. His permission was not sought, but it was more of an exclamation relating to Bhagavad Gita. Thank you, Maharaj, because
I
everybody
tell
is
you another
misinterpreting
important
this.
thing. There's an important element. This Oppenheimer was involved in these experiments for a very long time. Suddenly, he came upon something which gave him an idea of the eternal, the transcendental, the all-consuming, the all-accommodating phenomenon at the physical world. Remember, the explosion happens at the physical level. So, a vague idea of the supreme eternal reality he got at that moment. That's the meaning here. So it also shows there was something of a poet in him, because only a poet can relate that. He may have read the Gita, of course, but I remember, that happens to people who are highly imaginative, who look upon science as a quest for truth. In the process, he may have discovered this atomic explosion, which is certainly not very poetic, but still, in his infinite dimension, he gives you an idea of the infinitude, the eternal, the all-consuming, the transcendental. That's the idea behind it. The transcendental.
Thank you.
That's the meaning of time here. Okay. Yeah.
Hello, David. I see that your hand is up.
Hello, Swami. My question. I had one question, but in what you just said, another question occurred to me, which is, does that mean, well, two things. One is, is time with a capital T, is that the same as Brahman?
Yeah, in fact, there are many metaphors used in Vedantic literature, like Sakshi, a witness, time also, Kala. Kala is also used like that. Kala means time. This not focus time like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, not that, but the very transcendental reality. Everything happens within time in that sense. Yeah. That's right. So that's right. Yeah. Kala is used, Sakshi is used, then Akasha is used, there are, anything that gives you a vague, approximate idea of the infinite. But infinite can never be expressed, cannot be defined. So all that you can do is to approach the infinite with the language of using the tools of some metaphors which somehow indicate the transcendental, the eternal, the immortal. And time is one such. Yeah.
So that's similar to when they say it's the ear of the ear or the eye of the eye in the Upanishads. I can't remember which one it is, but there's one that says the eye of the eye, that kind of metaphor too?
Sotram, yeah. So the eye of the eye, ear of the ear. So behind the physical eye, there is a higher seer, the seer of the seer. So actually you cannot see the seer of the seer. That's what Vedanta in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says. No one can see the seer of the seer, the hearer of the hearer. So there is one which is beyond empirical perception, but which is behind all empirical perception. It's beyond empirical perception, but which is behind empirical perception. You cannot see Atman, but the eyes cannot become the seer, or you cannot become a seer without the presence of Atman within. That's the real seer, and that seer you cannot objectify, you cannot understand using mind and senses of perception. This also mantra if comes in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Yeah.
So is that's the similar to the metaphor when Sri Ramakrishna talks about the salt doll, or the one when he tries to explain but he can't.
Yeah, true. That's true. That's the same. All
Okay.
these great Vedantic ideas you find in Sri Ramakrishna's words, very simple, very straightforward, simple ideas. But the point is, unless we put things in a philosophical language, people will not take it seriously. You may for a spiritual seeker, these complex philosophical concepts are not necessary. But without these higher ideas really cannot exist, because you can imagine, if you read some very simple statements from the Bible, like the Sermon on the Mount or maybe some parable, which are very profound, very simple, people won't be enough. You cannot have a Catholic church based on Sermon on the Mount and the parables alone. So it needs Augustine, Aquinas, and take a lot of elaborate, complex theories and many things like that. But Shankara's commentary is important because for the first time, philosophy came out of Vedic literature thanks to Shankaracharya. The work he did, you can understand only if you compare the situation during pre-Shankarite times. All these Vedic literature were conceived and interpreted to be just as instructions that you meant to help you in performing rituals. That's all, you can imagine. And those rituals were meant for a small, tiny group of people. And Shankara brought this universal philosophy, which Vivekananda took to the Western world in 19th century. That's the idea behind.
So Sri Ramakrishna needed a Vivekananda to make it philosophical.
That's true. Otherwise, that's true. Otherwise, what will you... that is true. Actually, in a way, it's a fact. But we should also, we should be able to put things in a pot. The ocean should be condensed within a pot. The pot also should be emptied and becomes an ocean. Both are necessary. You have to condense the whole ocean into a pot, but when that pot is poured, it should be able to spread all over the ocean. So this is an important thing. From Vedas, this pot, he condensed the whole thing into Vedanta philosophy. Actually, the Upanishads altogether, the 10 Upanishads that Shankaracharya wrote, they commented, they constitute only a very tiny fragment of the entire Vedic literature. Aranyakas, Brahmanas, Samhitas, Upanishads, all this together. And among the 180 Upanishads in full form today available, you can get the names of nearly 240 Upanishads, and of them about 180 Upanishads are now available, and of which 108 Upanishads are very important, of which 36 Upanishads are very important because they are mentioned in Muktiga Upanishad. Of the 36, 10 Upanishads are important because Shankaracharya wrote a commentary on it. So this philosophical discussion can be found only in these 10 Upanishads, which actually constitute a very tiny fragment of the huge Vedantic literature. So you can find the whole ocean condensed in the pot. And the pot, if you put in, if you take out, if you break the pot, is the whole ocean. So that's why the tiny pot spreading all over the world becoming an ocean, the whole ocean being condensed in a tiny pot. This idea. This is from a Sanskrit poetic expression I am taking it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you.
Vijaya, you are next with your hand up. There you are.
Yes, thank you. Namaste, Swamiji.
Namaste.
Swamiji, I just wanted to ask you about this circle of life that you were referring to, and you said that the end is the beginning and the beginning is the end, and that we are in eternal bliss.
Yeah.
So my question to you is there really an end to this eternal bliss for one particular Atman, say that is me in this Janma? Am I going to find a liberation or salvation or whatever we call it, moksha? Or are we trying to say that there is absolutely no end to any Atma and it's just going to go on and on and on? And that is going to be the eternal bliss. So, in that sense,
Now
would
remember,
it mean that?
excuse me, you made a statement, then you take for granted that I agree with you. So please don't have that misunderstanding. So you make some statements, and then having said so, as having agreed upon this, so I don't agree because many of these statements are not really agreeable to Vedanta. So to
Okay.
begin with, I shall take up the first important point you made, which is very valuable. Thank you for the question. This cycle, that's very important. Now, what do you mean by this cycle? The point is this: so long as we are not aware of true nature, so long as we are ignorant of our true nature, so long as we imagine ourselves to this body-mind complex, suffering and enjoying, okay, we go on being born, living, dying, and again being reborn. This continues like a cycle. And then what happens? And along with that, we may also do a lot of good actions, lot of auspicious deeds. So these auspicious deeds may be meditation, maybe helping somebody, karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, prayer, meditation, all these may one day prompt us to think, what's the meaning of life? That is how you begin your journey. That's how you are making your first attempt to come out of this we. And then you may take an interest in Vedanta, in bhakti, in devotion life, in prayer, or doing good things, karma yoga, whatever it is. And that's how we begin our spiritual journey. And this may one day take us, not in one life, but it may take several life cycles. May one day it may take us, it may lead us to the highest realization. We are not this body-mind complex alone. So at that time you find, well, I am not this traveler in a wheel, being born, the suffering, enjoying, dying and reborn. I am not this. I am the eternal Atman. Again, this is not a concept. This is an experience that actually comes to us as a natural and inevitable result of our spiritual sadhanas. So remember, the wheel that you mentioned, what is the meaning of saying that it is beginningless? Because it's a wheel of false identities. False identities. We imagine ourselves to be the physical body. When we get sick, we think I'm sick because I define myself as the physical body. Otherwise, you don't think you're sick. Sukhi, dukhi, I'm happy, unhappy, and so on. But as a result of long spiritual practices, taking several life cycles, one day you may realize, in one life you may realize that, well, I'm not the physical body. So it doesn't come as an intellectual conviction. It comes in the form of a natural inner feeling. It's not an intellectual conviction or anything. Natural feeling. It's an experience. And then you don't think of anything in the previous. Now you can actually realize this idea behind. So this is an important thing. I wanted to first address the important point you made, the cycle.
Okay.
Okay, please continue. Please continue. Next, please.
Yeah. What I want to know is when and if we have this experience,
Yeah.
do we then become one with the Atman and we are not born again? Is that the belief, or that is my question, or
Okay.
that Atman has to come back again and travel from like a rebirth, like a new soul again.
Yeah, yeah. It is not that we become something. Rather, we begin to realize what we are, and we begin to realize that still now, till this moment, we were living under false identities. It's not that we become anything. See, in Vedanta, you don't become Brahman because you're already Brahman. But you have yourself, you have created this veil, this Maya. It is due to ignorance. So when you remove the outer cover, the act of removing the outer cover doesn't give you anything new. It only makes you understand what is behind the veil, behind the curtain. When you remove the curtain, you don't get anything new. You only realize what was already there in the curtain. Similarly, when the curtain of Maya is gone, the curtain of ignorance is gone, then what happens is we realize what we actually are, Brahman. We don't become anything. Of course, in Vedantic literature you find Brahmavid, Brahmaiva Bhavati, etc. These are words used. So very often the English translations may not convey the whole meaning of it. We realize that what we thought till now with body-mind complex, it's a wrong perception, and in reality we are Atman. So you don't gain anything, you don't become anything, you only discover the reality
To
that
realize
already.
what we are.
Excuse me? Yeah. Excuse me? Please continue. Please.
Yeah, in this birth, if we really do discover who we are,
Yeah.
are we going to still have a next birth is my question.
No. Once we understand that, we will have no more birth. Because we realize we are actually not this physical body that's being born again. From that moment onwards, you are freed from this cycle of life, death and rebirth. That moment. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Swami.
That's important. You call Jivan Mukta state means one somebody who's liberated even while living. Yeah.
So it's a little puzzling to me when you say that, because then does that mean that when all the souls in this universe do realize and discover who they are, that is going to be the end of the universe?
No, that's not, in fact, that's not the end of the universe. Actually, the universe, see, that very question won't arise because right now we are trying to intellectually analyze something that is actually beyond intellectual analysis. To give an example, if you really start practicing some spiritual disciplines today, you find tomorrow or after some days, your whole thinking process will be different. So very often in Vedanta scriptures insist that the reality is beyond intellectual analysis. Before we start climbing the steps, we are trying to analyze how it will look when we reach the top of the mountain. But we are right now at the bottom of the mountain. We have not even started climbing. So when you take the first few steps, you find our mind will be different. Our mind will not be asking these questions. We are asking these questions now because we have not even started the journey. This is important. That's in Vedanta. As you really practice some spiritual discipline, let us say karma yoga. That's what in all spiritual literature give this karma yoga. If possible, you can go to a temple or any place of worship, depending upon your tradition, and pray. That is good. And also along with doing something good, you find when we do some noble, unselfish karma yoga, or when we sincerely start praying, you find our mind also undergoes a change. The questions that we are asking now, we will not be asking once we begin our journey. And then when you look back, You think, oh, these questions have no meaning right now. So, questions are never answered in spiritual life. The questions cease to be questions. We won't be asking these questions when we actually start spiritual life. It's
Okay,
important.
okay,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's clear to you.
Namaste.
Is it clear to you?
Not very clear.
I shall
As
try.
you
I shall
say, I
make one
think
more.
I'm
I shall
still
make one more
standing
effort.
at the
Please
bottom
remember.
of the steps.
Okay, one more effort I shall make. Suppose you're climbing a flight of steps. Let's say this is 100 steps. Right now you are not even started climbing the first. We have not started climbing at all. You climb the first 10 steps. Then the way you see the whole flight of steps will be different from the way you saw before you actually started climbing the steps. When you reach 50 steps, it will be different. In spiritual life, when we take the first few steps, what are the first few steps? Karma yoga, practicing unselfishness, in doing whatever we are doing, prayer, meditation, all this bhakti yoga, any of the spiritual disciplines. When we do that, our mind will be asking a different kind of questions, not the question that we ask before even we start the journey.
Okay.
That's an important thing. The earlier questions get self-destroyed. There are no more questions. You won't be asking those questions. A child who is walking along with his father, grandfather in the markets, he'll be asking the grandfather to buy the chocolates, things like that. When the child becomes a young man or middle-aged person, he'll be looking for something different in the markets. When he becomes old himself, he'll be looking for something different. It doesn't mean that he was a fool when he asked for toys when he was a little kid. But those questions, those things have no value when he becomes a middle-aged person. In spiritual life, also this happens. Okay, thank you.
I understand.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Maharaj, there's one more question. David has his hand up again.
Yeah, please.
Swami, that reminds me, that interaction reminds me of what you said, how much you need to be in person to learn these things. That concept is so difficult that she was asking, that being in person is so helpful. What you said is so true. My last question is just a brief one. Is why is this called? Why is the Panchadasi not called something more poetic, like the Mahavakya Chudamani or something? You know, we have all these poetic names of writings, but this one almost seems like, oh, I couldn't think of a name, so I'm just going to call it 15.
In fact, this fifth section, it's called the fifth prakarana. It is called Mahavakya Viveka, means an analytical study or an analysis or a study of Mahavakyas. It's only fifth prakarana, fifth one. It has many other subjects discussed. Some of the very profound metaphysical ideas, ontology, ontological ideas, all these are discussed very elaborately. Different concepts in Vedanta, all based on different bhasha literature, but properly analyzed in Panchadasi. That's all. So the fifth section you can read. Panchadasi may be available in online, perhaps English version. You can read the fifth prakarana, maybe it deals with the analysis. Mahavakya Viveka it is called. Okay, thank you. Fifth one, okay.
David, even a minimalist title can be even stronger for it, poetically speaking.
Yeah.
I like that title a lot. Anyway, thank you, Maharaj. That concludes the questions, and there are no questions on the YouTube either. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Thank you. Namaskar. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Pranamastu.
Pranam Maharaj.